welcome to another edition of the Gaming Careers Podcast, the resource for people looking to find their fit in the gaming industry. On this show, you will hear game industry professionals talk about how they succeed in today's competitive environment and how you can do the same. I'm Steve Rudusky, your host, and thanks again for joining me. We have an incredibly special guest with us on the show today. We have Stephen Bounocore, the President of Stronghold Games. Stephen, thank you so much for being with us on the show today.
Stephen, thank you for having me here. This is going to be great.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be fun. So there's only one person talking. I'm just talking to myself in a studio. It's two Stevens talking. That's all
right.
that's happening.
Stephen, hi Stephen.
Hi Stephen. All right, so for our listeners that may not be familiar with Stronghold Games and kind of where you fit in the gaming space, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. Stronghold Games is a hobby game publisher, and that means that we're going to be putting out games that are gamers-style games, not mass-market games, but physical card games and board games that are for the hobby gamist, the gamer who likes to sit around a table with their friends, having a beer, or their families, and socializing in that way, and playing physical board games. That's where we fit in. When we've been in the industry now for over 5 years, and have grown in double-digit percentages every year, since that time. So things are going very well.
Excellent. And for our listeners, Stronghold Games is kind of a heavy hitter in the industry. So there are a lot of gaming studios out there, or gaming publishers. Why is Stronghold Games such a standout?
Well, that's a very nice way of putting it. I would say that we are I would like to think of Stronghold Games as a premier hobby game publisher. But, there are many, many, many larger ones. You can kind of call us, a little bit more boutique, in certain regards. Stronghold Games, I guess, would stand out, and the way we made our name initially was, that we went out and we looked for games that were out of print, that had been lost to antiquity, so to speak. And we went out, we found the designer of those games, and we brought those games back into print. Because in doing so, the gamers were looking for these games to come back, and they would then start recognizing, oh wow, I know that game. So we had a built-in market there. But then they might say, well, who are these guys Stronghold? Well, I'll take a chance on them because I know this game by this great designer, and I'll take a chance on Stronghold. And we proved that, we can go out, find these great games, bring them back with very highly upgraded components over, what they had originally when they came out, and do this, time after time. And soon after that, we went and realized that well wasn't going to, last forever. It was, that's going to dry up after a certain amount of time. So then we started getting into other markets or other kinds of games where we could go out and just go to designers and say, hey, what do you have to pitch to us? Brand new games, and also games that were published out in Europe, and we brought those over here. So that's how the business model has evolved over time, over the 5 years, and that was more or less a known plan. We start one way and then evolve it now. And our brand, Stronghold Games, has kind of become a marquee, especially this year. We brought out 10 new titles in 3 months during the height of the season. So it's been a tremendous year. 2014 was a tremendous year.
Wow. Okay, so now you mentioned the business plan of going out and being able to kind of find existing titles that had gone out of print. That's not the common story behind how most publishers kind of got their start. So
sure.
What kind of forethought went into that, and kind of who were you before Stronghold Games that you were able to put together that business plan?
Well, I think first and foremost, I was a gamer. I mean, that's really, where my passion, for the industry started. It started because I am you, or those out there who are board gamers. I am a gamer. And I went through the whole gamut of games. I mean, as a kid, I was a board gamer because that's what you did. And when I was a kid, which was a long time ago, significantly before computers,
right?
We played a lot of board games, and we played card games, and that was what was there. And then as time went on, you get a little older, and I got into computer gaming for a while, and then moved, from that and did a lot of that, did a lot of RPGs, got into MMOs for a little while. and I found myself back at board games because that's the kind of thing that I like. That's that social environment, that thing of just being around a table with people that's how I light my fire. I'd rather be, with people around a table playing a game than, far, far away on, over the internet and doing it. I'm going on a long, long way to how did we get to reprints and to where we are now.
No, this works. This is this is right in pocket. So go ahead.
There you go. So basically, we since I was a gamer from my entire life, and I was in touch with, at that point now, board games again, I saw the fact that these games had gone out of print. Survive being my flagship title, Survive Escape from Atlantis. That game came out in 1982 by some small company called Parker Brothers, which is now owned by Hasbro, the largest game company in the world.
Right.
They, if they can't sell 1 million copies a month of something like Monopoly, they don't really care about it, so they let it go out of print. And it was out of print for 10 years. And and gamers were clamoring over it, and they were going on eBay, and they were, for the crappy components that were in that game, they were going and spending $75 and $100 just to get a copy of Survive. It's a great game. Well, we saw this and said, we gotta find this guy, and this will be the way we'll start the company too. It wasn't my first game, but it was one of the first licenses I went after. We're gonna find the designer, Julian Cortland Smith, and we're going to find him, and we're going to get that license, and we're going to bring it back in print, and sort of the rest of that is history, because, that sort of put our name, on the board. Wow, they could get to this guy and get that game back in print, and it's something that everybody wanted, and it's still my most highly rated game, I believe, on Board Game Geek, and it is my biggest selling game. I've got a lot of games and a lot of game lines, and that one continues to be my biggest seller.
That's really cool. And what I like about that is you are able to take your passion for gaming and then look at the gaming market and say, where's an opportunity for me to help out other gamers?
That's exactly right.
And so, a lot of game designers start with the game in their head and they want to express. It's an artistic thing. And it's not that you weren't wanting to be artistic, but you were able to observe in the market, there's something that I can contribute and kind of revitalize a need. And so I know that you have an MBA in finance. How might that have contributed to you balancing out that business plan?
Well, I guess you did your homework. Look at that.
Everyone's got to do their research. Incidentally, to our listeners out there, there's a lot of information on the internet. Do your research beforehand, and then you can make great connections, like talking to Stephen.
That's right. You and I have other connections. We're both project managers in our other lives.
That's right. In our, I can't call it real life because I like this one more. But yes,
so do I.
We both have MBAs and all of that.
So look at that.
There you go. So this is kind of the area of, I think, how we can help a lot of our listeners, because if you start from an artistic standpoint, you have one particular mindset. And then when you meet the market, there's kind of some different things that happen. So why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, as far as, what I did, before Stronghold Games and what I continue to do actually, because Stronghold Games this is not known. I mean, it is known to a lot of people who hear me on podcasts, but Stronghold Games, while it looks like it's this huge company, Stronghold Games is me, basically me, and I have friends, who I pay with beer, pizza, love, and free games, who will help me out doing certain things as well. So it's really a one-man company, but it's less than that even, because I actually have another full-time, quote-unquote real job, which is a IT infrastructure project manager for a major wealth management Wall Street firm.
Nice.
So to answer your question, I mean, how did the education, play into it? I guess, and in general, how did my experience play into it? Well, I wanted to, what I thought I could do when I saw what the market was like, and and obviously I was that gamer that I'm explaining here, that I'm this passionate person who loves their hobby, and when I saw what the market was looking for, I said, I could leverage my vast experience, that means I'm old, and my decent education and great, and good, good project management and general management skills, leverage all that life experience. You know what you get when you don't get what you want? You get experience. So I can leverage all that life experience and the business knowledge that I have and start a company around a passion. Now, funny thing is that the gaming industry is not all fun and games. There is a lot of work.
What?
A lot of work for a lot of small margins. And, that's something I'm sure we're going to get to at some point here. But it's a very tough business. But, you can do things here if you've got the passion to do it and you want to do it and you want to follow that dream. You've got to be very persistent at it. And Stronghold Games and Stephen Bounocore got into it before there was Kickstarter. There was no such thing as Kickstarter. So we had to put up our own, and we continue to do, except in one instance that I'm sure we'll talk about in a little while.
Yeah.
We continue to put up our own capital, my own passion, my own marketing dollars, and being out there with the people. That's how I get my games out there for everyone except for one that I just launched the Kickstarter on because it's such a huge game way outside of what I have done in the past.
Oh, yeah. And sooner rather than later, we're going to crack that nut, and we'll be able to talk about a lot of the different aspects that you went through in order to kind of launch this Kickstarter. As far as Stronghold Games go, so what does the day-to-day look like? You have a full-time job and you're a one-man shop. How do you keep everything going?
Yeah, that's... I don't sleep a lot.
Yeah, there you go. Life-work balance, all that.
All that kind of stuff. It's... as a project manager, there are things you need to get done, and sometimes you have downtime. So there are points where I can do one or two things here to keep the rest of Stronghold going. The other stuff, and then in the evenings, when I'm not at the regular job, I'm here doing this, talking with you, planning out what the next projects are going to be, making sure the customer service is getting done correctly. My motto that I've come up with really over the last 5 years is a little hard work never killed anybody. And that's really what it is. If you really want to succeed at anything in life, and it could be the biggest thing that anybody takes away from this conversation, is that you got to work hard at it. Obviously being smart and having talent for certain things is very important. But all of that, if you don't really put your heart and soul into something, and if you don't have the passion as well, those things all together can make you a success and hopefully will make you a success. That's my advice to everybody out there. Put your heart and soul into it and really, really work at what you want to do.
Absolutely. And as it relates to what you want to do, also figure out what you want back out of life at the same time. And the reason I say that is, there's a lot of different ways of getting through life, and sometimes you can just get through. But as it relates to the gaming profession, you can make gaming your full-time job. When it's your full-time job, there's a lot of things that you're going to do that you don't like to do. You're going to be, if you're joining a big video game studio or a big publisher, you're going to do a lot of menial tasks that is not what you envisioned when you started. You can do it part-time on the side, like many of us do. I have a full-time job as well. That means that I get to really enjoy my hobby and side business. Or you can, put it all on the line and get out a big loan and start a company and hope that it'll take you, all by itself. That's really risky if you don't have experience as an entrepreneur or in business. There's that opportunity to get some experience that you were talking about, right, Stephen?
Mm-hmm. That's right. One of the, and this is going to go away from Stronghold Games, for a second, but one of the since this is gaming careers we're talking about here, on your podcast, one of the most amazing success stories in gaming careers for anyone in the hobby game industry, is Larry Rosny, who is the president of Mayfair Games. Now, Mayfair Games, if all listeners are not familiar, they are one of the largest game companies. They may be now the largest what's the word I'm looking for? Not owned by another company. Just recently, both Fantasy Flight Games and Days of Wonder, which were very large companies, both got bought by another company, Asmodee.
Subsidiaries, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes, they're now subsidiaries of Asmodee, which was always by far the biggest company in this industry, and they're actually a European company, but they're tremendous out there, and they're now even bigger with the acquisition of the largest American company, Fantasy Flight, and one of the largest ones, Days of Wonder. But Mayfair Games is still Mayfair Games. They are the top of their food chain.
Right.
They own the property Settlers of Catan, which is maybe the second biggest selling game in all of this industry after
I've heard of that
Ticket
one.
to Ride. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Settlers of Catan was one of the original, really started the whole Euro game movement out in Europe, and which flew across the U.S. as well in like 1995. The Eurogame revolution sort of started. Anyway, I digress. Larry Rosnai, the president of Mayfair Games, do you know he started in the industry? Do you know he started at Mayfair Games? He was a demo monkey, a booth monkey for Mayfair Games. He was just a fan of hobby games. He was there demoing games, and he did a very good job at it, and he got noticed, and he went up in the ranks. Sooner or later, he was a managing director. Sooner or later, he's the president of the company. That's seriously, an amazing achievement, for someone who basically started out, with a zero paying job, in the company. Booth staff at conventions get no pay usually. They get badges, they get games, they get food, maybe they get a room if they're lucky.
Right.
That's it. So starting out at no pay and then becoming the president of the company, and now by far one of the most powerful men in the industry, and a great friend of mine. So that's a tribute to anybody who wanted to think that that can never happen to me. It can. Work hard.
Right.
Work hard. Be good at it.
And what I find, this is a story that I hear very, very frequently. It's start by getting to know other people in the industry. And it's the gaming industry, I think video game or tabletop is an apprentice art. It still works off of the apprenticeship model where you find other people that have been successful, you help them out with their stuff, then when they need something, they're going to reach out to you. They'll look at your ideas, and it's kind of a very organic social experience.
Yeah, it certainly is. Especially in hobby games, because this is, since that's kind of what we do. Gamers kind of have that stigma that they're not social. I think that's
right.
Exactly incorrect. It's weird. I mean, some of them maybe because we're all nerds, right? We're all nerdy at some point. So maybe some of our social skills, some of us, isn't the best, but we are social. We want to be around people, and the way to ingratiate yourself into this industry, and to get to know, and to find the ways into things is to be social and to be in there and to meet people as much as you can within the industry already.
Absolutely. Now, Stephen, I have several different topics that I'd like to cover, but I really want to introduce your Kickstarter and this next game that's coming out, because I think we can address all of the points within this new project that's coming out. So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about that, and we'll launch into some things about it.
Sure. Well, thank you. Well, right now, literally, just yesterday, I launched my first Kickstarter campaign for a board game called Space Cadets Away Missions. Now, Space Cadets is a franchise of mine that we started 3 years ago, about 2 to 3 years ago.
And what do you mean by franchise?
Well, game line. Let's say game line, okay? I'm calling it, that's just another word for it. So, in this game line, this game line is based on space-themed games that are either cooperative or team-based. And we love it. It's my second biggest selling game line after Survive that I mentioned before. Mm-hmm. It does very well for us. Both of those two games that were already in the line. The original Space Cadets, which is a complete fully cooperative game, and then we had Space Cadets Dice Duel, which was a team versus team real-time dice rolling starship combat game. Something that no one's ever done before. Just a fantastic, crazy, chaotic romp.
Right.
But I have always wanted to do a game that had just oodles and oodles of plastic miniatures in it because, I mean, to me, those kind of games just look gorgeous on the table. And as long as you have great gameplay that can support them, those game experiences are truly sublime. Fantasy Flight Games does this the best of anybody in the industry. I mentioned them before. They were just purchased. They're the largest American hobby game publisher. Just got purchased by Asmodee, and they are phenomenal at bringing out these kinds of experience games that have these just amazing components in them. Well, of course, not wanting to be outdone by anybody, I had to try to get into this market as well.
Right.
But for any company that wants to put out a game of such magnitude, and we're talking about $100 board game now, okay? So anybody who's getting it, you're taking a huge risk. When most board games that you put out, that Stronghold Games puts out, are between, as low as $15 and we go up to about $60 or so. That's sort of the range, and lots of games in that $40, $50, and $60 range. When you're now extending it and saying, can I bring out a game at $100 price point, you're really going into a whole different market.
Right.
And I don't know if that market exists for me. So, just like a couple of other much larger companies than I am, tested a new market by using Kickstarter, and the two examples there are Steve Jackson Games. They did Ogre Designer Edition, and Days of Wonder that I actually mentioned before. They went into the digital realm with Small World on digital platform. Once they tested that, they went to Kickstarter. So I said, you know what, that's the way to do this. I can't print 5,000 copies of a $100 retail game without really making sure I have the market. Well, we put it out there. We just put it out yesterday. We had a $40,000 initial funding goal and stretch goals that go every $20,000 up and up. We funded the project to its $40,000 goal in 6.5 hours, and in less than 24 hours, we made our first stretch goal of $60,000. We're now sitting just over maybe 27 hours into the campaign at $66,000. One of those crazy sites that show you how you're trending and how much you should get, by the end, said we should get $985,000, which I do not believe. because if it is, I'm retiring. No, we're not going to go. I'm sure that's taking into consideration the fact that we got, in one day we got over 60,000. So right now I'm just happy to say that we are doing fantastically well. And I'll tell you about the game. The goal of the game itself is about surviving an alien attack on their ships or on your ship. So they're attacking various things, and you have various objectives in the game. So you can say it is a scenario based dungeon crawl, but now of course in space. You have a character, and you're going to utilize your equipment to go on a mission to go rescue and free the thralls, the human thralls that they've enslaved. Get certain samples of their blood. That's what the game is about. Wow. And the object here in the production of this game is to bring it out with up to 6 players. We had the game spec'd out originally at 4. I asked the designers to take us to 6, but we realized all the components we were going to need for that. We're going to be very, very big, especially when we went to miniatures. So the object here is we want to do this with 100 plastic miniatures in this game. So if we fund it fully, up to around the $200,000 level, which we're well on the way of doing now that we're only less than a day and a half into this.
Right.
We're going to be hitting that kind of level of 100 plastic miniatures, and I have all kinds of other interesting ideas to add into the game after we hopefully exceed that goal as well. So it's a very exciting moment. It's not a direction that I'm going to continue going on, forever, because managing these campaigns is very, 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 very time consuming, and for a one-man guy. I'm glad I have some fans out there that are helping answer questions and things like that, and designers are chipping in and doing some work. But it was a great way of exploring this new market, and obviously it does exist for me. So in the future, if I need to do another one of these games, I can do it again with confidence that my fans will embrace a $100 MSRP game.
Right. So you talk a little bit about the fans, because 27 hours, I'm looking at 66,500, about at 418 right now. Mm-hmm. That's just a crazy amount of response in a very short amount of time. What kind of steps did you go to basically prepare your fan base? Not necessarily the Kickstarter, but how did that happen? Is it just the popularity of your previous titles?
Well, a few things. Initially, I did a little bit of pre-marketing of this, starting I started like planting the seed on a couple of podcasts that something big was going to happen like this. So, in a couple of the podcast appearances, without going into too deep, I said, we're going to do this Kickstarter. It's going to be for a big, big game. Watch it coming out. And then at Board Game Geek Con, which is Board Game Geek, the biggest board gaming site on the internet, has a convention in Dallas, Texas every year. It's sort of the end of the convention season. We kind of made the announcement that we were going to do it. And we had some banners and stuff like that. We were talking it up there. And then after that, we simply got it all ready, made sure that all the ducks were in order, made sure that the pricing was right. We had everything with the printer. And I did a press release saying, starting any day now, we're going to be doing this. So the board game media lit up. They were like, whoa. If they hadn't heard it already, now they heard about it. And then a few days later, we launched it. And it's been going very well. Right now on Kickstarter, there happens to be a couple of other very big games going on. So it actually wasn't even it was maybe not the best time to launch, but when you have to launch, so to speak, you have to launch because we have to make sure there's funds. We have to get the game in print. And we're doing a very, very quick turnaround on this. We're going to have this game. My goal is to ship this game out to backers by August and to have this game at Gen Con, which I assume that your listeners know about, which is the largest gaming convention, I think, now in the world. They've over 55,000 gamers there last year, unique gamers. So,
right.
That's our goal. Whatever format the game ends up coming out in, which I hope is the fully funded big one, we will have that game there at Gen Con to be playing with people.
That's really exciting. Now, a couple of the things that I want to talk about are really two things that relate to marketing. The first thing is really how accessible you are to podcasters specifically. You're all over the podcast gaming boards. I want to talk a little bit about how, somebody might tap into that similar experience. And then the other one is your press release, which for me, as soon as I reached out to you, you're like, hey, Stephen, that's great. You sent me this press release, which made it very, very easy for me to capture the idea and really what's special about Space Cadets away missions quickly to be able to talk about it. So has that been part of an intentional strategy, or is it just you like talking to people on podcasts? How does that work for you?
Absolutely. To me, I think one of my best assets is hopefully my personality and the passion that comes out when people speak to me, either in person at conventions when they see me, and certainly on podcasts as well. So it has been a strategy from day one of Stronghold Games that I would make myself available as much as possible on podcasts. And I've gotten more and more comfortable, and I've got more and more people who ask me to come on their show. So I'm obviously doing something right. I sponsor fully one show, if I may mention them, the Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast. Great bunch of guys on the Dice Tower Network, and they're just doing fantastic job of covering the gaming industry. And I just want to make sure that I can be available as much as possible for all gamers out there. So it's been a great way of making sure that people keep hearing about Stronghold Games. And I kind of do a circuit. Especially, I kind of start that circuit usually when convention season starts and when the new games are starting to get released. I'll kind of reach out and say, hey guys, can I make my annual appearance kind of thing. So I'll start making annual appearances. I'll start making like my one appearance on almost every podcast starting in like June, and it'll run through like November. I'll keep being on podcast after podcast after podcast. Some people say they get sick of me, but a lot of people say, and I hear it more often than not. I hear people saying, Buonocore, here he is again. I know it's going to be an entertaining podcast, so I'm happy to hear that, because I think that I give a different spin depending on the tact of the podcast and what the podcast is about.
Right, and since the gaming industry is such a social and interactive experience, really being able to identify with you, even via podcast, I know that I listen to a bunch of different gaming podcasts, and I hear you do the rounds myself. I'm like, it's Stephen. I'm going to love what I'm hearing, or I'm going to hate what I'm hearing, whatever. But I know that I'm going to have a reaction, right?
There you go. Thank you. Yes, I hope to evoke a reaction at some point. That's at some type every time I'm on. I agree with that.
Yeah, in marketing, you always want something to happen. Either love me or hate me, but react.
Right, but remember me.
But remember me, exactly right. And so the other thing that I wanted to touch on briefly is the press release. That's not making a game, but if you're trying to communicate your game to other people that you want to be able to talk about it quickly, and now that might be around a gaming table or talking to, their friends, you want something that's quickly digestible. So, what I can just speak to the audience briefly about is, Stephen, you sent me basically a one-page write-up of the excitement behind this new launch, a lot of exciting language around it, and then then a page of here's how to contact me for more information, and then a whole bunch of visual candy. Pictures of the box, pictures of the minis that are coming out, lots of color, not a whole lot of things to read, but a lot of things that evoke an emotional response and kind of the flavor of the entire game. And, sitting in the podcast host show, I don't have to do a whole lot of research behind that, to get excited and to get to want to talk about it.
Well, press releases are really good because, especially now that, there are more and more of people like you, podcasters, who want to report on the news and have people on and talk about what's going on in the latest, getting out exactly the way you said it. You put out a press release and they're not that hard to write. There are certain formats you follow. You remember from business school how you do it, but you can go right online these days and you can find all kinds of guidelines on how to do them. Most people follow a very standardized format, and the most important thing you do is you're not supposed to be salesy. You're supposed to just provide the facts, provide all the main details of what you're doing, and then give contact information for more information. And of course, then you can add, if you like, the pretty stuff that draws the eye into, like, oh wow, look at those miniatures, look at that box and stuff like that. You can always add that at the back, just with the game images, attached, that kind of stuff. So it's a business document that then allows people in the media, and the gaming media is the media for us, to grab onto your news and then to do reporting on their own. And they will expound upon what you have done by going and doing more research and adding more stuff in and finding out more and more about the company and things like that once they read this. So.
Right.
Yes.
And so for our listeners out there that are thinking about that, starting their company or wanting to get their game out, spend a little bit of time about what that looks like in a document pitch. Because, while it's not supposed to be salesy, it does act as a hook. And I have to admit that I'm liking what I'm looking at, and that's one of the chief reasons I wanted to reach out and talk to you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned a number of times the miniatures, and that is one of the topics that I want to discuss a little bit. So plastic miniatures are traditionally extremely expensive. So how did you manage to want to get 100 miniatures in a box for under $100? How's that happening?
That was my insane idea. I just said, the game was pitched to me, was much more scaled down than that. With 4 players, I said, I need 6. The designers went back. They gave me 6 players. Obviously, the components, went up, and I said, yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And we had thought about this in the beginning. We had thought about this simply as an all cardboard game. So all those figures were going to be cardboard stand-ups.
Okay.
Lots and lots and lots of cardboard stand-ups for all those aliens that are attacking you, and your 4 or 6 guys that are up to 6 guys that are on the board with you, and that's how it was. And I looked at it and I'm like, this is good. This is a great game. This does look good. This artwork looks good. I'm like, what? I want miniatures. I want to do this big. So I looked at it, and we were already at 84 cardboard stand-ups at that point, and I said, all right. I want some scenarios that really need fully 100, almost all of those miniatures. I want to get this up to 100 miniatures, and I'm going to now go cost this out. So designers worked on their end, and I went out to my favorite printer, and I said, this is what I want. You make this happen with me. And, back and forth with the sculpts and making sure the sculpts looked right and making sure that the costs were going to be right once we boxed them all together. This is where the passion really comes in. I wanted to see this happen, and as long as I could do it at the right price point, and then use Kickstarter to cover up cover those costs, those sunk costs of all the molds, and the molds and the sculpts and the art. There's so much cost that goes up front to doing a big plastics game. I had to make sure that all worked out. So those were the factors to get me there.
Well, you bring up an interesting point there. So using Kickstarter to offset the sunk costs, how much of the art and molding and it has been completed before going into the Kickstarter process? Have you already put down that money? You're already sunk?
No molds yet, because the molds are a tremendous cost.
Right.
But the artwork is done and partly paid for. The sculpting is done. And I have to pay for it. I got the bill, but the printer said you can wait on that until we actually do the game.
Okay.
Because he knew I was gonna, he knew at some point I'd fund this and we would do it. So it's most games don't have a large upfront cost. Most games do not. When you do a board game, your upfront costs are your print, the cost to print the game. That's that's going to be your big upfront cost. Yeah, yes, you can have artwork, but the real big cost there is I got to go print the game. So there's going to be a big bill at that point.
Right.
Here, I've got a big bill before I even print game one, before I even get anything to the printer to actually make the physical game. I've got to create these molds for all those figures. That's a tremendous cost to start with, and it's a very dangerous cost, because if I don't sell this game, that money's not coming back any way, shape, or form. That's why Kickstarter was a very good choice in this particular case. To check out that market. Is that market there? Do people really want this game the way I believe in my head? With my vision for this $100 100 miniatures game. Well, so far looks like they do, and things are starting to go off very well.
Excellent. So I know this is not even at all related to what's happening right now, but did you have a plan B? The market says, maybe not so much. Did you have this coming out as all of the cardboard stand-ups, like you said?
That actually is exactly right. Right in the Kickstarter itself, you can see at the bottom of the Kickstarter, I actually answer the question specifically. Why did Stronghold Games decide to do a Kickstarter? This is the first one I did. And I said, well, we don't. We never do. The only reason we're doing it now is because we're exploring the market. This game, and I said, this game will be done if this doesn't fund. But it's going to be done with cardboard instead of plastics. I want to see this gorgeous, so that's why I've turned to here. So right now, we've already funded. I've already promised to do this game with X number of plastics. We're definitely doing it that way. If we continue running up the ladder, we're going to do it with more. That's how it's going to work out.
Very cool. Now, earlier on in our conversation, you talked about Stronghold Games and where it kind of fit in the market space as kind of a premier or boutique type gaming segment or product that you're producing. Is that always what you're going to be? Are you trying to develop these high quality games and really kind of push the top of the market as far as that goes? What does your business strategy look like there?
Well, there's always the goal of anyone to have that one game. Every company that we've basically talked about so far had that one game that made them really big. Days of Wonder had and still has Ticket to Ride. And then they even had another one, Small World. Huge game. Ticket to Ride now is so big, it rivals Monopoly in sales. It's almost like that kind of game.
Wow. Okay.
That big. It has gone from being, boutique to like so mainstream. Not quite, to that level, but it is. You can find it everywhere. You can find it just about everywhere. Mayfair Games with Settlers of Catan, almost everywhere. These companies were made because they had that one title that not only became evergreen, that's the term that we use in the industry, meaning it has sales over time. It has explosive evergreen. It sells, 10,000 copies a month or more. Really, really big number movements for those big titles, which have created those games. So of course, any company wants that. Stronghold Games wants that. Every small company would like to have that one game that will propel them to a whole nother level. But that's those, there are only so many of those games that, can be out there. We'll continue to try to find one that's as accepted as Munchkin or Ticket to Ride or Settlers of Catan. In the meantime, I'm also going to do hardcore gamers games. This, particular game that we've been talking about here, Space Cadets Away Missions. That's not going to be that game because people are the average person's not running out to buy a $100 game.
Right.
Other games that we did this year, Kanban. This is a big, big, heavy Euro game. Really, really dense, thinky kind of game for a very, small subset. Now, the game has done fantastically well. I sold out my first print run completely into distribution before I had it in my warehouse.
That's
awesome.
Awesome.
Called being allocated. When they have ordered more than you have, than you were even going to have in the warehouse, you've been allocated. I sold that Kanban out in that way, and I've gone to reprint. Panamax, another heavy Euro game that I came out. It's about shipping through the Panama Canal. That game also was allocated before it got into my warehouse. Good problems to have, but problems nonetheless, because I have to rush out and go reprint the games again. So Stronghold's going to continue to find just these great gamers games as most of its business model, because finding the big game that's going to be the next huge crush, compete in every retail store, that's a lot harder.
Right.
Certainly, we'll bring out the lower end games, the light games. We also did a game called Diamonds this year, which is just a trick-taking card game, but we brought it out with great upgraded components. So while it's only a card game, it also has 135 acrylic crystals in the game to represent the diamonds, the currency of the game that you're trying to achieve as you're playing tricks, winning them, or taking these suit actions when you don't win tricks. We're going to continue to simply bring out great games, and hopefully, we get that uptake on one of them. And if we don't, I think the gamers will still be happy to see everything that we're going to be doing, now and in the future.
Stephen, the last question that I have for you is, where can people find out more, and where do they look for your Kickstarter?
Sure. Well, in general, find Stronghold Games at strongholdgames.com. Right there, you can sign up for our newsletter. Don't worry, we don't spam you or send your email someplace else. You'll get a newsletter from us maybe once a month or twice a month, depending on how busy it is at that time of year. You can find us on Twitter at Stronghold Games. We have a very big, fun Twitter presence there. I take gaming seriously. I don't take myself seriously. So we have good dialogues there with our fans. On Facebook at Facebook/Stronghold Games. And of course, as you mentioned, the Kickstarter project, you can simply search for Space Cadets Away Missions, and you will find us there. We're a Kickstarter staff pick, right as soon as I launched, about an hour or two later, I was made a staff pick, which made me feel really, really good. Obviously, somebody there liked the things. I mean, there's a lot of those staff picks, but They liked it, obviously. So you can go there and you can see what we're doing. I think even if it's not, people out there who are listening, maybe they're not board gamers, at least they'll be able to see, hey, well, what is this kind of stuff about? What is this? Why would I use Kickstarter? What is this? What do 100 miniatures look like? You can see the miniatures that we're doing on there, and you can see the quality of the game and things like that. So I ask everybody to go out there and take a look at what we're doing out there with Space Cadets Away Missions now on Kickstarter, and we'll be there for the next, by the time this posts, say the next 25 days or so.
Stephen, this has been an incredible interview. I really appreciate your time and sharing your experience with us. I hope to have you back on the show again.
Oh, absolutely, Stephen. Thank you very much for having me. And yes, this has been a lot of fun. Very different than the standard questions that I get. So I love being on shows like that are going to challenge some of the things that I don't normally talk about. So this has been really good. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks so much. You made my night.
Okay, bye, guy.
As of the release of this episode, Stephen should have about 21 days left on his Kickstarter campaign for Space Cadets Away Missions. Now, if you haven't gone over and checked it out at this point, I highly recommend that you do so. It looks like it's a lot of fun, and it's fast on its way towards achieving all of its stretch goals. You've been listening to another edition of the Gaming Careers Podcast. You can find the show notes for today's episode at thecompanybar.com/podcast. There you can find bullet-pointed notes from the show, links to resources discussed, as well as the extended interview that has even more great content for you that didn't make it into the episode today. That's it for this week. I'll see you next time.